Hi and welcome to the 8BitCADE Excel image file creation video. In this video we are going to teach you how to create and customize your 8BitCADE image. The 8BitCADE image is essentially a file that you can load onto your 8BitCADE Excel flash chip, which contains all of your games and all of your menu screens, as well as any other associated files that are required for you to be able to select and load your games onto your 8BitCADE Excel. Now we achieve this by using Mr. Blinky's Python utilities. So this video is generally broken up into two main parts. The first part is how to create the image file for the 8BitCADE Excel, and the second section is how to load that image file onto the 8BitCADE Excel using Mr. Blinky's Python utilities. Now there are some prerequisites for this video that I would highly recommend that you already know how to do, and the first one is obviously you need to have the Arduino IDE loaded onto your computer. That's really important. The second thing is that you should have Mr. Blinky's homemade package added to your Arduino IDE system, and it should be up and running, and that will allow you then to do the third point, which is to configure the Arduino IDE for the 8BitCADE Excel so that you can then load games onto your 8BitCADE Excel. Another optional prerequisite would be is that you know how to load your modified bootloader. So if you do find that you have any issues with your bootloader, that you understand what those issues are. If you've not achieved those prerequisites yet, then go back to the 8BitCADE Excel resource section where those videos are there to support your learning. If you understand the first 3 points and have loaded the Arduino IDE and configured it for the homemade package correctly, related to the hardware requirements of the 8BitCADE Excel, then you're ready to make a start. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to download Python utilities, and there's two places in which you can access Python utilities. The main area to access Python utilities would be from the GitHub page. The GitHub page essentially is where Mr. Blinky puts the latest version of the Arduino Python utilities source code, and so any updates or any adjustments that Mr. Blinky applies to that source code will be updated, and so that should always be your first port of call. Would be to go to Mr. Blinky's Arduino Python utilities and load down the latest version. But you can also get a recent version from the 8BitCADE.com Excel resources as well. So always go first of all to Mr. Blinky's Arduino Python utilities to ensure you're getting the latest version. But if that site goes down for any reason, or there's any issues with that site, then they will always have a backup on the 8BitCADE Excel as well. But please be aware, if Mr. Blinky updates Python utilities, then we won't always know immediately that update has been done until we check. So that this will always be the latest version. Okay, so I'll go on to Google or whatever search engine that you use and type in Mr. Blinky's Python utilities, and you'll find Mr. Blinky GitHub page will come up fairly quickly. Here we have, this is Mr. Blinky's page, and we have to give him a huge shout and say a huge thank you for all the amazing work that Mr. Blinky has done. Most of what we have achieved at 8BitCADE.com couldn't really be achieved without the support of without the support of the homemade package and the Python utilities, which is absolutely superb. So yeah, he's certainly well loved within the gaming community. Okay, so here you can see the homemade packages here if you haven't already downloaded and used it, and if we click on Arduboy Python Utilities, you can see. So just to give you a bit of an update, this tells you exactly any updates that have occurred, and you can see there was an update five days ago. So you can see why it's important to go to the original source code. So what we need to do now is press download, and download as a zip file, and there you have it. It's a very small file, but there's the Python utilities, and the instructions to use them are here, but essentially if you follow the video instructions then you'll achieve the same goal. Okay, so we'll go to our downloads, and move Python utilities onto the desktop. We can extract the files here, and we have Arduboy Python utilities, and we can do one or the other, either delete the folder or drop it into the actual folder if you want to keep the original zip file. So, delete. Okay, let's open the file. Okay, so welcome to the inside of Python utilities. Essentially we have two main sets of files here. We have the actual flashcart structure here, and we have the Python code here. As you can see, all the Python files here. All these files here are used to help you load your flashcart. All these files here are there to help you structure your flashcart. What we are going to concentrate at the moment is the example flashcart. So we're going to use the example to give you a breakdown of the file structure and how you modify the file structure to customize your own flashcart. So what I tend to do at the moment, and you don't have to do this, but what I do is I tend to drag the file out for this here, but I wouldn't recommend that you do that. But I'm going to just drag that file out for a second, and here's my example flashcart. So that's the same as the example flashcart that I've got here. So we're going to work from this file here. So I can now put that back in just to make sure I've done that. So essentially what I'm looking at now is the example. Okay, so the next part of our presentation is where we're going to look at the individual structure of we're going to look at the structure of the APK Excel flashcart. So we're not interested at the moment in the Python files, only the actual flashcart files. So that's the bit we're going to work on at the moment. So let's take a look. Okay, so what do we have here? We have really four main areas. We have the CSV file, okay, here we have a flashcart image, we have an Arduboy loader PNG, we have game categories here and here, and we have category screens here. So let's just first of all talk about the game categories. So if I open one of these folders up, you'll find there's two files inside. One is the actual game in a hex format. The other one is an image, PNG image, which is 128 pixels by 64 pixels and is black and white. Okay, so the APK Excel image, all of the games that you load onto your into your category folders, hence action, must have these two files. Must have the actual game and a PNG image file. The PNG image file must be black and white, must be 128 by 64 pixels, because that's the size of your screen. And obviously black and white because that's the colors that your screen can represent. Obviously it represents white pixels. Hex file, we use the Arduino IDE to create the hex file by using compiled binary. We'll show you how to do that in just a while. So any games that you want to load onto your APK Excel, you have two files. One is the hex, one is an image file, and what will happen when you open up your APK Excel and you are searching for games, that image will come up. When you click on that image, it will load that game. So if you have a look at arcade, you'll find there's two games in here: 1943 hex file game, an image which is again 128 by 64, and here is ArduWack and the ArduWack image. So you can see that this folder has one game, this folder has two games. Platformer, one game, Castle Boy. Now one of the things you have to ensure as well when you look at these is that the spelling is the same. So Sansan, Sanson, Castle Boy, Castle Boy. So it's really important you don't make errors. Sorry, the spelling essentially is really important, and spelling's important here because all of the names of all of the games and PNG files are recorded in this CSV file here, and we'll talk about that in a second. So folders have categories. So when you look at the 8BitCADE Excel flashcart, here we have exactly the same structure. So you can see, but we have more folders. So we have a folder for creative, and we have the hex file, and we have the PNG file, which is what is actually displayed on the APK Excel, so which you click on to actually load the hex file. So this is the flashcart that everybody will have access to here. So you've got even one of favorite games is great, so you can put all your favorite games on there, but you can see the spelling is identical for the two files. Okay, and it just makes it easier that when you start recording the names of the games in your CSV file, that the spelling is identical, so it just makes it a little bit easier. Anyhow, so there you go. So the first thing you need to learn is you can add categories as well. So if you want to add a category like favorites, then all you need to do is just create a folder, type in favorites, and you can add your games to your favorite folder, and we'll show you then how to implement how to add that to your image. So we have categories with two files that are required per game. Okay, so that's all of these covered. We now have category screens. Category screens are basically are screens that come up on your APK Excel, which help you divide each of your categories. So you could this will basically slide from left to right on your 8BitCADE Excel to the different categories, and then when you hit a category that you're interested in, you will go up and down, and they will then that will access the games. So when you first of all turn your 8BitCADE Excel on, you'll have a main menu screen that comes up, which I'll just show you now, which is this one. This is the ArduBoy one, but obviously you've got an 8BitCADE main loader. And then when you're looking at your list, you will move left and right. When you move left and right, you will select your categories. So you'll be just like this. And when you press up and down, you'll then access those games within those categories. So the platformer game, if you're moving left and right and you hit the platformer and you press up and down, then you'll access platformer games. So this will then come up under your platformer game category. So we have category screens and game screens. You click on a game screen and that loads the hex file associated with that game screen. And we have our main bootloader screen. So let's just have a look at the flashcart for the the APK Excel, and you can see we have the APK loader here, which we've created ourselves, and you can create your own loader. You can have your own name on here. It's very, very easy to do. You can just, as long as you draw your screen at 128 by 64 pixels, make sure it's black and white, then you can actually have your own loader screen. You can modify this loader screen by deleting this section here in something like Paint and add your name, or you can even completely redesign the loader screen. All you would then need to do is you can keep the same name, 8BitCADE loader, and just create your loader, your PNG, and rename it 8BitCADE loader, so you don't have to change any of the names in the flashcart index. Or you can rename the loader, but then you'd have to rename the loader in the flashcart index. So we're gonna show you that in a second. Okay, so these can be modified. Hex files are created using the Arduino IDE. Category screens are created using things like Paint, pixel art programs, etc. Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. As long as it's 128 by 64, it's a PNG format and it's black and white, it's absolutely fine. And we would recommend that you customize your image as much as you possibly can. You can add more categories, but this last file is the file really that ties everything up, and this is your flashcart index. Now your flashcart index is a CSV file, so let's just have a quick look at what a CSV file is. A CSV file is a type of plain text file that uses specific structuring to arrange tabular data. Because it's a plain text file, it can contain only text, but the structure of the CSV file is given away by its name. Normally CSV files use a comma or semicolon to separate each specific data value. A CSV file can be read by Python, the data extracted by the program. Now if you want to learn more about CSV files, then you just click on this link and it will give you a really good description of how CSV files are used. Now let's just apply this information to the actual file itself. So here's your CSV file. Now this is you create this in Excel, okay, but if you have a look at how you save it, as you can see, if I just maximize file save as, you can see it's CSV and it's listed. So you can't save it as an Excel workbook. You need to ensure that you're using something like Excel, but it must be in a CSV format. So that's what you need. So you need something like Excel, and with the facility of being able to save it as a CSV file. Now one of the things they said about a CSV file is you use text with a data structure that is divided with things like commas and semicolons. So if you have a look here, that's the first line that we've got. The first line is really important. That structures our data that's in here. So let's talk about that. Now your CSV file is basically the file that pulls all of this information together. Basically Python utilities will read this file and then structure your image. So if you make an error here, when you go to structure your image, it will tell you that you've made an error. It actually will tell you what game area that you've made an error in. Now let's first of all just talk about, at the top you've got your if you like, your sort of data structure and data order. So you've got your list, description, title screen, hex file, data file and save file. We never alter this line. Okay, we never alter this line. So if you have a look at the second, we've got our bootloader. So it says bootloader, okay, so 0 bootloader arduboy loader, which is the name of the PNG. So 0 bootloader, with the description of exactly what the PNG is, and then the actual arduboy loader. If you change the name of arduboy loader, then you would need to change the name here. So if you made that 8BitCADE Excel, then you would change it to 8BitCADE Excel. The spelling must be absolutely identical. If you say it's John's favourite games image, then you'd have to put John's favourite games image. The spelling must be absolutely identical. So if you change this file here, which is your original loader screen, if you modify it, if you change the name of that file, then you need to update your CSV file. Simple as that. Okay, next one, category number 1, action. You can see in category number 1 we've got action games. Okay, now category screens, action PNG. So this is pointing first of all to your category screens loader page here. So the first thing it's looking for is this PNG file. So it's action games, called action. So action games, category screens, action PNG. If you change this file here, if you for example wanted to change the PNG file, if you wanted to do a better category screen, you can still leave that category screen called action. But if you call it, if you had action 1, action 2 and action 3 because you wanted 3 categories of action games, then if you change the name here, you must change the name here, the name of the PNG file here. Okay, so if you change the category screen name, you'd have to change the category screen name here. Otherwise it won't know what it's looking for. Okay, let's give you an example of that. Let's just say, for example, we want to add an extra category. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on action, I'm going to copy the action games category screen, and I'm going to place it on here, and I'm going to paste, just as to keep the format. First thing I'm going to need to change is the list number. So I know that once I get to 7, I need to get to 8 because it's a new category. I can't use the category action, so I've got to change the name because we already have one called action. I could call it action 1, I could call it action 2, I could say this is action and I could have this as action 1. But actually what I want to do is introduce a new category called favorites. So I need to type in the word of my category screen. So I'm going to call it favorite. I'm going to copy it to make sure I've got exactly the same spelling, and I'm going to replace the action.png. So I've got now a new category called favorite, and it's related to favorite.png. okay, now I need to create that PNG. So that's really easy to do. When I go to category screen, so I'm just going to click off of this, you can see I now have a new category. I'm going to click on category screens, and you can see what I've done is I've copy and pasted action and changed the name to favorite here. So always make sure that you've got exactly the same spelling. So if I can even copy here, go back, open up my flashcart, click on favorite, and make sure that I've got exactly the same spelling here to ensure it's the same. Even if you spell it, if you accidentally spell it incorrectly, as long as it's the same spelling, it will work. So I now have, and you'd have to do the same here, but I don't have a favorite folder. So I now need to go new and paste. Okay, so I've got favorite, category screens, favorite folder, and a favorite inserted into my CSV file. I've got no games in there, so if I add a game, I now would then have to update this with a game. So what we're going to do is we'll do that next. We'll add a game and add the game here so you can see exactly how you can build up your customized image file. Okay, so the next part of the video, what we really want to do is show you how to create the game. And to create the game, we want to create the game in hex. Okay, so now we're going to show you the hex, how to create the hex file for your game image. So we need to find the game that we want. We want to then download the source file, unzip it, open up the Arduino IDE, open up the INI file, which is the Arduino file, which basically is your main program file, if you like. Configure your IDE using the homemade package, check for errors, and then compile. Use the compiled binary function, which will create your hex code. So this is the overview of what we're going to do now to create your hex file for your 8BitCADE Excel image. Okay guys, let's find a game. So first of all, I'd go into Project ABE, type in Project ABE, and you should get it up here by the which is an Arduino emulator. So it allows you to play games online using an emulator that the phenomenal Philippe Manga created. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Here you have lots of sources, but the main source that's working currently is, I think the Game Jam source is working, but mainly it's Erid. Erid has been kind enough to collate lots and lots of phenomenal Arduino games. These guys are amazing, they really are, and they've been kind enough, including the people who design these games, to supply them open source. There are some absolutely phenomenal games here, there really are, and it's a real privilege to be able to have these games on the 8BitCADE Excel, where you can just load them, any of them up whenever you want to, because they're on the image file. So really good. So we're going to look for Pico Vaders. There it is. Right, so if you find a game that you're really interested in, you've got a couple of options really. You click on the game that you're really interested in, and Pico Vaders is basically Space Invaders. It's a Space Invader clone, but it's brilliantly done by Buchau. So and it's got an open source license, which means that we can place it on the 8BitCADE Excel image and share it openly which is brilliant, because it just means that it saves a lot of time through configuration and everything, and people can use, if people have the same hardware configurations, they can literally just load the image straight on and play the game. Anyway, you've got couple of things that you can do here. The two that I tend to use is you can play the game now in the emulator. So if you click on emulator, you can then, it will load the game onto a web-based emulator and you can play the game. You can create your own games here. So if you click new game here, you can actually start creating your own game and testing it online using the Arduboy libraries, which is actually really good, and we use that a lot actually at my workplace, which is a school. So when we're teaching students coding, we actually use this quite a lot for lots of gaming tutorials and stuff, which is superb. We want source code. We need the source code because we need to change or configure the source code to fit with the APK Excel. So we click on source and it will go to the GitHub page. This is the PicoVaders GitHub page. All you need to do is read any instructions that you're required to, which are really straightforward. Say a huge thank you to Buchal for allowing us to even have access to this phenomenal work and download it. So just download the zip. So you can see you've got it here. I'm going to pull the zip out, put it on my desktop and minimize. I'm going to pull the file here. You can see it's called PicoVaders Master. So we're going to extract the files here, which will probably do it onto my other screen, but I'm going to pull that back over. So there's the extracted files. I'm going to take the word out master because it can have problems. Whatever folder name you have, whatever the name of the folder is, must be the same name as the file inside. So if it says PicoVaders here, then it needs to say PicoVaders here. So you need to change that. That's really important. So now I can click on PicoVaders and it'll be absolutely fine. And it doesn't really matter about the external file name here. So PicoVaders, open up PicoVaders, Arduino IDE. Okay, so what we need to do now is we have PicoVaders and we have the pitches, which is really important. So we need to configure. So luckily, because I use the Arduino IDE a lot, my configuration is already set up, but you can see we want homemade Arduboy. So select here. We want Spark Fun Pro Micro 5 volts. We want Arduboy optimized core because we have the optimized bootloader added. We're using an SSD 1309 screen, CAFE 3K bootloader. Your flash select pins are 0, D2 and RX. We don't need a port at the moment because we're not going to load the game onto the actual 8BitCADE Excel yet. What we're going to do is, once we've got all these settings correct, we're going to go over to here and we're going to compile binary. Now before we do that, we've got the right settings here, but really we ought to verify first in case there's any faults with the code. So we verify, done compiling, and what we want to do now is go export compile binary, and that creates the two files. That will create a file with a bootloader and the actual game file. So if I just minimize, now there was already a file in here, picovaders.ino, another hex file. That's for the actual Arduboy. We now have a PicoVaders for the Arduboy Pro Micro alternative build using SSD 1309. That's the file that we want. So the bootloader file can be deleted, and you can keep the PicoVaders file hex for Arduboy if you have an Arduboy. I do, because they're amazing. But what I really want is this file here. So what I'm going to do is, now sometimes what I do is I just copy that file and then place it here. So I'll go copy, get rid of, go to my example. I've got favorites and I paste it here. But actually what I want to do is, I don't want to call it this. I'm going to call it Space Invaders. Now I'm only going to call it Space Invaders just as an example for my flashcart, because I think it's important to obviously recognise the creator. So I think if the creator called it Pico Invaders, really we should call it Pico Invaders, but just as an example I'm going to call it Space Invaders. So I tend to try and keep to some sort of format. So I've got Space Invaders like this. Now what I'm going to do is I've renamed the hex file, and I'm going to copy the name as well. So I'm going to go copy. So I've now got my first game in my favourite category screen folder, and I'm going to go onto my flashcart index. I've got my file here, so I'm going to probably drop. Best thing for me to do at the moment actually is I've copied it, but I won't worry about that for the minute. Now what I want to do now is link that game. So to link that game I need to copy a game list. So I'm going to go on here and I'm going to go copy. I'm going to go paste. So I'm going to click on here. So I'm going to come up on, let's just press escape just to turn that one off. Click on here. It's got to be number 8, which is our new category screen. So the next thing is we need to change the name. Okay, so here we want Space Invaders. So I was going to click on my favourite, click on Space Invaders, copy the name so I don't get it wrong. So it's the same spelling, and highlight the name, Control V, Space Invaders, and then obviously what I need also is a Space Invader PNG. Okay, now, but I also need to make sure it's in the favourite category. So copy the favourite category, change it from shooter to favourite, sorry. So Space Invaders, favourite, Space Invader PNG, and then you want favourite in here as well. Right, and I also need Space Invaders hex. Okay, so let's just double check. So first of all, let's have a look at one of the other ones. So I've got, for example, here I've got puzzle games as a category. So first things first, Hangman, a game which is in puzzle category, which has Hangman PNG, which is in the puzzle category, which has a Hangman hex. So we have Space Invaders, which is in favourites, which has a Space Invader PNG, which is in favourites, which has a Space Invaders hex, and that's how you do it. Now it's nice and easy. If I put another 50 games in favourites, all I've got to do is copy and paste, and actually the only thing I'm changing is the game and the game, three areas really. The game, name of the game, the name of the PNG, and the name of the hex. So that's 3 main areas that you need to change. Okay, so that should give you a really good indication now of how you can build up your image. You just have to be really careful on making sure that the same names here are the same as the names in the actual files. So here what you've learnt so far is you've learnt that you have category screens, category folders. Each category folder has a hex file and a PNG file, and that you have a flashcart index, a CSV file that ties it all together, and then we use a loader screen as well at the very beginning once you first turn your unit on, which is referenced here. So if you change that, you need to make sure the names tie up. If you want to add games or categories, all you need to do is copy and paste the relevant areas and make sure that the names correspond to the screen and the folder, and that the hex files have the same name as the actual game and have the same name as the PNG. Now we've done, when you have a look at favorites, the last thing for us to do now in favorites is to add a Space Invader PNG file. Okay, so how do you create a category, how do you create a game PNG file? Well, first of all, you can actually use there's lots of people use lots of different ways in creating their artwork. Okay, you can use software like Microsoft Paint, you can use websites, pixel art websites, Photoshop or Illustrator, or you can even download free software like GIMP, which is very, very, very good, and you can use apps. But what you need to do is just make sure that three things are correct. It must be a .png file type, it must be black and white, not grayscale, and it must be 128 pixels by 64 pixels in size. So that's really, really important. Okay, so here we have a Space Invaders load game screen, if you like, already done, and all we did was use Paint. So that's if I go properties, it's 703 bytes. It's a very, very small file. It's a PNG file. It's got exactly the same spelling as the hex file, and it was created essentially using Paint. So if I open up Paint and bring it over, you'll see it here. So I'm going to zoom in. You can see when I go view, I think it's, or is it home? My apologies, properties. You can see it's black and white, pixels, 128 by 64, and that way you can create your artwork and then just go file, save as, and then PNG, and that's it. So that's how you do your PNG file. Now and then you can just use, I just use text. I'm not going to teach you how to use Paint because a lot of people use lots of different software, but that's essentially how you can create the Space Invader splash screen. And I would recommend that you can add all sorts of graphics, you know, little Space Invaders and stuff, make it a bit much more exciting. We haven't really done that, but then the whole point really is we use these basic splash screens, if you like, for the games, because we're hoping actually that you guys customize it all and use lots of different pixel art styles and stuff. It's a part of the creative process, so you know you can really customize. We really want to hear about how you customize your menu system and everything as well. Be really interesting to find out. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to go to a website, pixel art website, which I'd recommend. So you can use something like a, I think Start Drawing, pixel art website here, and you just need to make sure that you go for 128 by 64. Oops. New drawing, and just get rid of those, and you can start drawing your you can see here all the way to here is 128 by 64 X and Y, and you can create your splash screen here any way you want, add all sorts of pixel art that you want to use, and then all you need to do then is, once it's all done, is just download it as a PNG. So when you go download, you'll see it'll download it as a PNG file. I just click on here and go 128 by 64. You can add layers, etc. Now we do have tutorials on the 8BitCADE Excel resources website that show you how to use pixel art, and it even shows you how to incorporate pixel art into your 8BitCADE Excel games as well. So please have a look and you know, make full use of the resources as a highly creative process. Okay, so once all that's done, what you need to do then is get your Space Invaders PNG, copy, and place it in your favorites, and go paste, and make sure exactly the same spellings: Space Invaders, Space Invaders. So that's it. That's how you create your image. So how you add categories, how you add games. Now when you're doing yours, you won't have this file here, because this file here is actually all of this information processed into this file here. This flashcart image is the actual file that gets loaded up to your 8BitCADE Excel. So that's what we're going to look at next, is how you actually then install the software and load up your games. So this is the last part of the video. Okay, just a quick update. Not all of the utilities work with Python 3.7 but all the utilities that we use to create the image and load the image do. So if there's a couple of things on the if there's a couple of aspects that you want to load, you want to use within the Python utilities, and if I just jump to Mr. Blinky's area here, like any specific features like EEPROM backup or EEPROM restore, then you're better off loading 2.7, not 3.7. But if you have a look at where it states about the Python utilities, you can see there's a warning here. But you can also clearly see that the uploader works with both 2.7 and 3.7. The flashcart builder, which is what builds the image, works with both 2.7 and 3.7. And it requires Python npip install, so we need to ensure we do that. Flashcart writer does, and the flashcart backup does. And to be fair, we tend to use the Python utilities that we use are the flashcart builder, flashcart writer. They're the main ones that we actually use. It's the builder and the writer to create the actual flashcart image and then write it to the actual flash chip. So just thought I'd mention that. So the first thing we need to do is click on python.org downloads, and that will bring you to here. I tend to use Python 2.7. I have no issue with that at all. So you just need to download it. Okay, so I've got a Windows based machine, and it's 64-bit, so I need the AMD 64 version. Download it, which is done. I'm going to drag it over the download onto my, well, I'll just grab that onto my, go to downloads and just drag it onto here. Okay, double click, install all users, next, overwrite because I already have a directory there. Okay. Okay, so you can see that once you start installing it, you must make sure that you add python.exe to path is checked on the install. So if I just come back here and pull down, you can see here that add python.exe to path will need to be clicked. So that's really important. So make sure that you've got no X's, no crosses on here. Click next and install and finish. Okay, so now that you've downloaded and installed Python 2.7 and you made sure that your add python.exe path was checked, we now need to run the command line, and we need to ensure that we install PySerial and Pillow. And the reason why we need these two is we need this for the flashcart writer. In fact, if you go onto Mr. Blinky's GitHub page, you can see for the flashcart builder you need to install Pillow, and for the flashcart writer you need to install PySerial. So we need to do that next. Okay, so first we need to do is grab hold of our command prompt. So just type CMD command prompt. Just drag that over into the recording screen, place that here. So there's two things that we've got at the moment. There's a couple of things that we've got at the moment that we're going to be working with. Okay, one is the command line, and the other thing is the actual flashcart. Now you can download this flashcart from the APK Excel website, and if I just click on it, you can see that it's got the flashcart index, the 8BitCADE loader screen, it's got all the category folders, and it's got all the category screens images in here as well. So it's got all of the ingredients that you require, but of course you can create your own as long as it's correct and everything's correctly labeled and the labels relate to everything in the CSV file. It will work. Now what we need to do now is add the Python utility shortcuts to this part here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where I've got a copy of Python utilities. So where you downloaded Python utilities, what you need to do is copy the flashcart builder and go paste, and the flashcart writer, copy and paste. So this now resembles exactly what your flashcart should look like, and we use the flashcart builder to create the image, and we use the flashcart writer to load the image to the APK Excel. But we can't do that yet, so what we need to do first of all before we do that is type the commands into our command line to direct towards the flashcart, towards the builder, and then towards the CSV file, which will then combine it all into an image. So to do that, what we need to do is, first and foremost, is we need to just copy and paste the following commands in. So you need to type this: users Lenovo desktop flashcart. This is because this is pointing to the desktop to my flashcart image, and you can see that once you've done that, it now comes up flashcart. Okay, so the next thing I need to type is Python flashcart builder flashcart CSV file. So that should now build our image, and the image should arrive here, and you can see that's what it's doing. So you can see it's 5 meg image, it's got 229 sketches, 16 titles. Now if you were building this and you had a problem in some way with the spelling or link between the games and the actual CSV file, then that would stop, and that would actually tell you that there's an issue there. So then you would be able to then be able to correct that and run that process all over again. You can also see that the flashcart image has now arrived here. So what we now need to do is to plug our 8BitCADE Excel into our USB connector and into our PC, and all we need to do then is to drag this image onto the flashcart writer, and as you drag the image onto the flashcart writer, it will then actually load the image onto the system, onto the actual console. Okay, so we'll grab the image, drop it onto the flashcart writer, and that will now load it onto the 8BitCADE Excel. And as you do, you'll see that it's starting to write it block by block. You can see there's quite a large amount of data that's got to go through, so it's just writing it block by block. And while it's loading it block by block, you'll see the red light on the 8BitCADE Excel flashing. Remember, the 8BitCADE Excel needs to be plugged in to your USB connector. Okay, so that's now loaded the image, and what you need to do now is turn your 8BitCADE Excel off and on, reset it, and you'll be able to then test your image and make any improvements or adjustments. So I hope that was useful. That's how you customize your own 8BitCADE Excel image.